welcome to the first ever BC Rich guitar to feature on my channel. I am so excited to get into this guitar with you guys because my affection and interest on BC Rich guitars extends back even further than when I could play the things. So before I could even play a guitar, I knew about BC Rich. I really admired what they were doing, and I was really into multiple bands such as Slipknot, Motley Crue, people like that who've actually played the things. I even remember the first time I ever saw a BC Rich guitar. Now, I was bunking off school one day and a friend of mine who had not long ago started to learn to play guitar, he was lucky enough to have just bought a BC Rich Beast. Now, I remember this so clearly. It was a red NJ series Beast. It had chrome hardware, Duncan designed pickups, and I remember looking at it and just going, oh my God, I didn't know guitars could even look like that or be that shape. It was just a mind-blowing thing to look at, to see in person. Now, in the preceding years following that, when I got to be a teenager, I started my first heavy metal band, and my bass player at the time, who's actually still my bass player now, he had a BC Rich Warlock bass. It was an NJ series, made in Japan, so built like an absolute tank. We gigged that thing all over the UK. It got an absolute hammering. It got covered in alcohol regularly. And to this day, it's still going. It's never needed any repairs to it. All it's needed is just setups and restringing. Now, just to bring you up to speed on where BC Rich is currently at as a brand, they kind of went downhill a little bit in the 2010s. The brand was licensed out to a larger company, and that company basically rinsed it. They just piled high, cheap, nasty looking guitars for like 200 quid and just sold as many of them as they possibly could. Now, here's the good news. In the past couple of years, BC Rich has actually been bought out again and is now back in the hands of people who seem to be extremely passionate about the brand. Now, back in the late 70s, when BC Rich first started being a thing, their whole take was that they were gonna sell guitars that were custom shop quality at mass-produced prices. Their first guitar, released in 1977, was $999, which is expensive even by today's standards. However, those guitars were absolutely legendary in their build quality, and they really did fulfill the promise of custom shop feel and components, but for a price that was just way, way less than what you would pay to have something custom made. So, I will link in the video description a very interesting podcast that I listened to with one of the current owners of BC Rich. Their ethos now is that BC Rich will not sell cheap guitars anymore. So it really is going back to its roots, which is custom shop quality at mass-produced prices. Now, those are some big words and some big promises from BC Rich, especially considering that this ain't 1977 anymore. There is tons of competition. Mass manufacturing has become unbelievably affordable, so manufacturers of guitars are able to offer specs that even just 10 or 15 years ago would have been unthinkable past a certain price point. All this to say that when the opportunity came up to get one of these into review for the channel, I absolutely jumped at the chance. Once again, nobody has asked me or compensated me in any way to make this video. This is strictly my own content and my own unbiased opinion on this guitar. Have BC Rich fulfilled the promise of bringing back custom shop quality for mass manufactured prices? Let's find out. So here in my eager hands, I have a BC Rich Extreme Series Shredzilla. Yes, that's really what it's called. This particular finish is cyan blue burl, and I have to say it's absolutely stunning. This is not one of those finishes that looks amazing in pictures and then is slightly disappointing in person. This thing actually looks even better in person than it does in photos, in my opinion. Now, in keeping with BC Rich's new brand promise of only the best of the best, every single piece of hardware and material choice on this guitar is done with a view to quality. So we start with a hip shot bridge, followed up by a set of Fishman Fluence modern humbuckers. We have a lovely straightforward control setup. So we have a master volume, which is a push-pull to control the voicing on the pickups. We also have a three-way toggle switch. I prefer a blade switch, but it's a decent quality toggle at least. We also have included a kill switch, albeit an unbranded one. It's not a light up Tessie one like I have in a whole bunch of my Legato guitars behind me. However, it's really cool to see, and I love playing around with these things, chucking in some kill switch stuff on riffs just to spice things up a little bit. A 5-piece maple and wenge neck with an Indian ebony fretboard on it. I have no idea what the difference is between regular ebony and Indian ebony. What I can say about this particular fretboard is I really like the fact that it's not overly dyed. Now, a lot of especially metal and rock focused guitars come with ebony fretboards these days. And I've seen ones that are so heavily dyed, they're just black. They look like the keys on a piano, and it just looks a bit ridiculous, to be honest. It's a piece of wood. I quite like it when it actually looks like a piece of wood. Now, we have the sometimes controversial addition of abalone binding all around the neck, the headstock, and the body. Now, it's Marmite, which means you love it or you hate it. I personally really like it. It is a classic BC Rich thing that they've been doing since before I was alive, and I'm really happy to see it on this guitar. I think it's just the finishing touch to what really is a stunning burl top. We have a proper Graphtec nut, and we have proper branded Grover locking machine heads finishing off the headstock. I was really happy to see when this guitar arrived, and I didn't know that it had this feature, but on the back of the neck, the lacquer cuts off at a certain point. So the reverse of the neck is actually satin, but the whole rest of the body and the headstock is lacquered. Fantastic, because you have just a really nice satin, smooth feeling neck, but you have the robustness and the glossiness of a lacquered body. I've owned a ton of satin finish guitars lately, and whilst they look lovely, they are not durable in the slightest. They chip easily, they develop shiny points where your hand rests. They're kind of a nightmare, a little bit like matte finish cars. They look lovely, but they take a lot of looking after. This is not like that. It's a proper shiny ass lacquered body. It's really thick. You get a proper slab of wood for your money with this thing. However, strangely, it's really light, which surprised me because it's a thick guitar. The body wood is mahogany, which is a very dark, very dense wood. So I was expecting a little bit of a spine buster, but somehow they've managed to keep the weight down. And I'm not sure how, some sort of witchcraft. So to summarize up and down this thing, you're talking best of the best specs, best of the best hardware choices and material choices, and it feels expensive. Does it feel custom shop? Could be debated, but in terms of mass manufacturing, this thing feels premium as hell, and it definitely looks it. quality wise, now, BC Rich, like I said, have come out swinging with the kind of soft relaunch of the brand. They're claiming that their guitars are as good as you can get for anything mass manufactured. So when it comes to evaluating the build quality of this thing, I'm absolutely going to get my microscope and my magnifying glass out, and I'm going to go over this thing with a very critical eye. This thing is really expensive, and so it should be top drawer when it comes to build quality. I am really happy to report that this thing is built like an absolute tank. It feels lovely in the hand. The fretwork is absolutely consistent. It's not sharp. The frets have a nicely rounded shoulder on them. The Graphtec nut is extremely cleanly set. We have no horrible gaps or glue residue or any of the kind of horror stories that we've experienced with some guitars on this channel. I am going to have to call out just some slight inconsistencies with the white binding on the neck, especially on the bass side. Now, I'm not talking about the abalone binding, I'm talking about the cream binding that's on the top that incorporates the fret markers as well. It's just a tiny bit off in places. It's a little bit wavy. It's a little bit darker than it probably should be. That really is the only thing manufacturing wise that I can fault. Aside from that, this thing feels solid. It stays in tune like an absolute champ. Short of adding an Evertune bridge, this is as good as tuning stability gets, trust me. And I think that's always a good sign of how well a guitar is put together. Now, ergonomics wise, this thing, like I said, is surprisingly light. There is a really nice deep belly carve in the body, so it's very comfortable to play sat down. The neck profile is very, very thin. It's almost bordering on like Ibanez levels of kind of thinness. It is really nice. It feels to me like a thin C shape. I haven't actually checked what it's supposed to be, but it certainly feels like a thin C with really slim shoulders on it. I do have a couple of issues with this guitar ergonomically. Number one is the placement of the upper strap pin. Now, it's on the back of the guitar. I prefer it when it's on the upper horn of the guitar as opposed to the back. The reason being is once you attach a strap to that pin there, because it's on the back of the guitar, it's going to have a tendency just to tip forward ever so slightly when you're playing live. I would have much preferred to have seen the upper strap pin attached to the upper horn here, because it's going to hang in a more balanced way when you're playing stood up. I also have to say that unfortunately I'm not very keen on this kill switch. Now, I've been spoilt in a way because I own 3 or 4 Legato guitars with LED Tessie kill switches, and they are as good as a kill switch can get. Not only do they light up in a corresponding color so they look cool as hell, but in terms of using them, the travel of the button is tiny. So you can do absolute precision kill switch work with those switches. Now, there's one on this guitar, it's plastic. It doesn't really feel or look in keeping with sort of the premium nature of this thing. It also has a really long travel. So to press in and get it to kill the signal, it takes way, way more travel than a Tessie switch would. So unfortunately, what this means is that you're not going to be able to be as precise with it as you would be with something like a Tessie kill switch. So top marks for including a kill switch on the guitar. The execution of that kill switch, however, it could be better. Once again, I am extremely disappointed to find that neither a hard shell case nor a gig bag come with this guitar. Not only that, but the official gig bag for this is extortionately expensive. For some reason, the gig bag for this guitar is more expensive than some hard shell cases I've seen. And the hard shell case that's meant to go with this guitar is as much as some budget guitars I've reviewed on this channel. So I'm not really keen on that, the fact that nothing comes with this, and if you do want the official gig bag or case, you're going to be forking out a king's ransom. Now Now let's talk about pickup choices. This guitar comes with Fishman Fluence modern humbuckers. I'm really pleased to see that these ones are the black chrome finished ones that are more expensive than the regular ones, and they look fantastic on this guitar. Now I also own a 6-string legator guitar that has Fishman Fluence moderns fitted, and you would think that they would sound exactly the same as these do, but they don't. So my long-standing theory is that Fishman Fluence modern pickups have a bigger variance in tone between guitars than any other pickup I've tried. I don't know why this is, but having reviewed maybe a dozen guitars now with that brand of pickups in, they can vary massively between guitars. So if you're not a fan of Fishman Fluence moderns in 6 strings like I am, you may still want to give this guitar a try, because I found I actually really liked them in this guitar. I do not feel the need to replace them like I have done in my other 6 strings. With the bridge, you get the usual choice of 2 voicings, an active compressed sound and a more open passive sound. My choice is always voice 2 in that scenario. With the bridge, however, things are slightly different. They've wired this guitar up in such a way whereas you get voice 1 on the bridge, but voice 2 is actually wired as a coil split. So instead of that second voice, you get a split coil version of voice 1, which is interesting. It's great to have that from a versatility standpoint. However, you may want to be advised just going into this thing that voice 2 is not accessible off the shelf with this guitar when it comes to the neck pickup. You will need to make some modifications there if that's what you want. Now with the heavy sounds of this guitar, I've been absolutely rinsing it through one of my favorite Kemper packs, and that's the Tone Wars Mesa Badlander profile. Hopefully you will agree that this thing just sounds epic for anything heavy, rock to metal. You can just riff out on this thing all day long. It feels just absolutely built for the job, and it sounds like it is too. I really do have nothing but positive comments to make about the sounds I'm getting out of this guitar. From the squeaky clean cleans to the absolutely chugging, brutal heaviness that I'm able to get from it. This really is one of those guitars that you struggle to put down, and a guitar that will make you late for appointments. So let me bottom line this thing for you. This is a fantastic guitar. I think BC Rich have delivered on the promise of going back to their roots and delivering custom shop experiences for mass manufactured prices. Now this package is not without fault. As I've said, the omission of any type of gig bag or case is very disappointing at this price point. The fact that if you do want one, they are just extortionately priced is a bit of an off-putting thing as well. Minor ergonomic complaints aside, the execution of this guitar is fantastic. I think it's worth every penny of what they're asking for it. Much to the detriment of my credit card, I'm really coveting getting a 7-string version of this new line of BC Rich guitars in now. Is that something you would like to see on the channel? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you very much for tuning into my channel once again. If you found this video entertaining or useful in any way, think about chucking me a subscribe because it helps me and encourages me to keep making content for you. Better yet, you can also support me via the Buy Me a Coffee link in the video description below. Until the next video, take care of yourselves and I'll see you soon.